everybody in Nerfland, back again. Now, on to the next stage. Now this end is the fun bit. It's where we do some cool detailing and where we benefit from having parts we've already stuffed up that we can use to mock things up, and then actually when we've got these ones butchered enough we can transfer said butchering to these ones and it'll be a lot neater. So what I'm going to do, I reckon, is that one fits somewhat like that, and that's perfect because it leaves the screw hole for the battery box open. So I'm going to fit those, one of those either side. It also lends itself to the slab sidedness of this instead of all this detail and this ultra I would have otherwise had to get rid of. So that's going to go something like that. I've got to work out exactly what I'm going to do here with these screw supports. If I take them off, it's going to drop it slightly, so it'll go up just a tad, which still could be alright. So that's the first thing I might do on this one, just take off that and the inside part and see what happens. And when that's there like that, then got to work out how that goes there. So what I'm going to do straight off is I'm going to take both of these on and just see how we go position wise. Okay, so I'm going to take this post off and the protrusions inside so it so just from that I can see that front drop, that front slope is holding the whole thing up, so I have to cut a chunk out of that. So I'll just mark the straight line. I'll cut up like 3 or 4 mil, cut that section out, and if that doesn't work, cut a bit more out. Okay, so this back lower corner is also an issue. Do the same there. Right, so that fits perfectly there. That has a plate behind it, that surface there, which holds that out, so that's something to deal with, but not a problem. I can easily make a small circular relief there for the screw access. Except for that hole along the top, I could actually use this piece. So what I'm going to do, I saw a post the other day on YouTube about somebody asking how they could fill up a big gap on their Nerf guns, and before I could answer, James Redding, I believe it is, answered with what I was going to say, which is using the Degoo glue in liquid form. And in this case, it's a cut line all the way through there for my Dremel. What you do, you'd put a piece of tape along the bottom, push it down so there's no leaks. I'll have to clean up the back here. Then pour the Goo glue in, just a little bit, just to form a thin surface. And once that's dry, you put a bit more and a bit more, just build it up. And that way I could very possibly make that cut line disappear. Because I was actually thinking of using that process on this hole here. And I was going to just cover that, cut that down, just fill it. Probably could do the same thing on that side, but definitely on this side, just fill that up. Might have to do the whole thing, and but this will be a good experiment because it's a small piece. It's what I consider a throwaway piece, so if it screws up it's not going to be a problem. So we'll do the Goo glue thing. I'll do it from the outside, that way I've got a nice surface, and I've cleared the outside a lot easier and better than I've cleaned the inside. The outside's easy to get to. So that's my dam that's just going to hold the Goo glue from going anywhere. And now all I have to do is drop it in and I can just lean that up against somewhere. Perfect. Mix up the Goo glue. Very liquid as you can see at the moment. So what I'm going to want is this to be pretty smooth on the inside because I don't want great big lumps of glue that I have to sand or cut away before I can actually fit it. So I'm going to put a fair amount of great big lumps of glue in there and then clean a lot of it away. I just want it to fill up that crack first. Okay. Not being sure how to clean it up, first thing I'm going to try is just the expedient of a piece. Yeah, leave that to get dripped on. Expedient of a piece of new paper towel, which seemed to have worked. Okay. There we go. So we've got a smooth internal surface. You can see the crack. You should be able to see the crack is full of goo glue. And hopefully that means when we get around to taking that tape off, it will be fine and I'll be able to use that piece. So, yay for Andy. Right guys, it's about 20 minutes later. As you can see, I've taken off the tape and it pulled out a little bit, not much, reasonably dry. But what that has given me is like a key that I can then trowel putty in, because I know from previous experience using this stuff, it tends to stay a little bit soft, a bit hard to sand, but I've put some 10mm putty over that, smooth it in and make it a little bit easier on myself. Already glued the other one on the other side, sanded off all the nonsense, and now it's just a matter of pulling it apart and doing the epoxy putty around it just to neaten it all up. But that one will go there like so, and that screw is accessible for the battery box. Glued that one on that side. Just in the process of gluing this one on this side when I suddenly realised I have a battery door to deal with. And so this can be glued to the battery door because I can take the screw off and get it out. I just got to make sure I can do that, and it's got all these things like the tabs here that fit in and movement and everything, and this really can't go that way very much. It might be enough. But so there's that issue. The other issue is the handle coming down and sitting over the top of it. So I'm actually going to have to make it so, cut it so this nestles this, but isn't actually attached to it. I decided before I deal with that, I'm actually going to deal with the fitting of this lower bar. What I needed to work out was this shape, how it gets moulded into this front area here, because I want it like that, those two surfaces roughly even, not like that, which would look silly, because your hand's got to fit in there. So what I did, I got my, what do you call it, a profile gauge out, just a cheap plastic one, but it works. I can get it in there, I can do it this way, straight on top, got the shape, can't get it in like that. So what I've done, got the shape, transferred it to a piece of paper, cut out the piece of paper, and then transferred it onto there. And I've got a rough idea what I've got to grind out. So what I'm going to do is get the grinder, grind it out slowly, go step by step, move down. I'm going to have to either, probably both, is cut off some of the sides of this, because it's a bit too wide, and build it up with epoxy putty. I'll just get a rough burr and grind out the bulk of this until I'm near that line, not right on it. Then it's a case of continually test fitting and referring and moving in and changing to gentler cutting heads and then a sanding disc. And I know this is going to be nowhere near the fit, nowhere close, but I need to know how close, and you can always take away material. It's really hard to put it back though. So if you can see in there, it's not very close. It needs to be wider, of course, and I can see as I go deeper I'm going to have to deal with that shelf as well. Well, that surprisingly didn't take very long at all. I don't know if you can see the join in there. It's not too bad. It's going to sit something like that. So really some judicious filling with epoxy putty, and you can see some of those angles I've got to deal with up the front here. So that's all the waste that comes out there. This should just click down a bit lower on that. I'll have to clean up a few things on the inside and get rid of this rail, and then I'll have and it'll sit much more like that. Yeah, so I think I should be right. Now the next step in all this, dealing with this hole. That hole and that hole. Now I've got an idea what I want to do, and so if that's sitting there like that, what I'm going to have to do is like hoses and pipes coming out here, going up into this unused magazine well, that sort of thing. Close that off, close that off, close that off, and even cut that off along there. Get rid of all that, so it's just a smooth line all the way along. Stick this on here, I guess would be the best idea, in the place I want it, and then I can work this bit around it as I attach it. And then there's a case of puttying and all this and getting it all solid and nice and cool. What I'm going to do now with this part is cut off all this, get rid of all this stuff, chuck it in a separate container of goo glue and make up some orange. Because I'm then going to do, I saw a post, somebody was asking how to fill up the holes. I think it was actually this hole on this particular piece, and it was James Ridling, I believe, sorry if I've got your name right, who suggested putting some tape across there and then filling it with glue glue and creating a new sheet, and then cutting it with a razor blade so you can still get it in half. Well, I'm just going to take this in half and do it half of the time. Right, back again. So cleaned all this off, sanded it all smooth along there, even took out this little ridge next to the hole because I need the tape to sit flush. I'm never going to be able to fit the tape inside, but it'll go on the outside, tape down, press down, and then I'll pour the goo glue in from this side. But one thing I'm going to do before that, to make sure my little bit of cloth tape, paper tape I've got left sticks, and you need to use paper tape, plastic tape, obviously the acetone will melt it, is to clean the surface with isopropyl alcohol, and just luckily these lens cleaning cloths are isopropyl alcohol, so I use it on my 3D printer all the time. So I just want to make sure there's a really nice stick, because I really don't need huge amounts of goo glue going everywhere. So I need to actually prop it up on something so it's relatively level, so that shouldn't be a problem. Magazine there, and yeah, that looks relatively flat across there. So now I'll put a nice piece of tape over that. Now I've got a couple of different layers to deal with, and there's also a hole there which I'll put a bit of masking tape on the inside. So the way to do this is to stick it down as you go, not put it all over it then try and push it down, because it'll just pull up in areas. So now what I've done also, when I cleared this hole out, I took out all the little burrs and bits from the edge, because you don't want the goo glue melting that and anchoring to that, because that's pretty weak. You want it actually anchoring into the hard-sided plastic. And this looks like it's going to do that really well, with even protrusions inside it's going to grab onto. So I need to make sure that will stay flat when I put it down. Right. Just found an old plastic cup. It should last long enough for this, so I'll just pour some of this thicker stuff in here. Add some acetone. Get a nice weak slurry. There we go. So that's what you want. And I'll just pour that directly in, and it'll go where it wants to, which is that side mostly. And bring it over, tip it up. So it's obviously low at that end, so I need to make it a bit higher. Chuck a bit of scrap plastic under it. The good thing is it doesn't seem to be leaking everywhere. Just shaking it back and forwards like that, I'm actually roughly evening the surface. What I'm going to do is keep building it up until it's nice and thick. And that'll be a case of over a period probably of a couple of days, because this stuff takes a while to dry, and the thicker it is, the more sort of gooey it is. So, and also I'm even going to use this as an experiment, just leave that in there, see what the acetone does to this plastic. It might be inert, so I could use those all the time. Okay, here we are back again. Got a nice thick coating in there, ready to pull the tape off, and this should be something of a success. Not too shabby, not sticking up too far. In fact, it's got a bit of a shallowness in it, which will be great for filling in with some putty. That's excellent. I'm pretty happy with that. Now I've got to work out what I'm going to do with this hole and this hole. Lots of holes everywhere. Obviously can't do the same thing because I've got no way to pour it from the other side unless I drill a hole, which would be kind of defeating the purpose. While that cover's drying, I'm going to deal with the cutting of the line through this, because I don't want to put Tamiya putty over there and fill that and sand it smooth, then try and cut the line, because that would just be a nightmare, because the putty would crack and chip. So I'm just going to do my best eyeballing work and maybe even use a ruler. Now there's an idea. Now this stuff is really sort of spongy, so it's not going to be a very good cut line. Sorry about the head, it's not the best thing to look at, is it? Especially the front. There we go. Cut. Okay, so I've got a little bit of joinery, jiggery pokery to deal with up here, but that looks like pretty good. So what I'm going to do is pull out the screws and see if that actually does separate. Now the good thing about the inside here, I could just probably sand that down till it's perfectly flat and then put sheets of plastic over it. Simply do some judicious pushing of a sharp knife. There we go. Let's see if it comes out. There we go. So there's my new floor. It's not too bad. Well done, James. Good idea. Right, so it's not the easiest way to look at this upside down, but as you can see, it's starting to, it contacts this blue plastic there, so I'm going to have to take like a section out so it just drops down a bit, and I'm more than likely have to go and get rid of this Picatinny rail, and even looking at it I might extend this line straight through like so, just to make it look a bit neater. So I'll start cutting and butchering things and we'll see how we go. Okay, there's this little chine in the side of this thing which makes it a natural line to follow, and according to my ruler it's about 6-7 mil. So I'm going to set my fence to 5, which will give me a mil's space in case I do something horrifically wrong. And it looks like to cut along there. Yeah, okay. I'll just do a little test piece first. To see where it's cutting. So it's well inside that, so I'm quite happy. I only cut up to the black line. And just for those of you who don't know, you try and cut that little extra bit with the bandsaw. Your bandsaw will make an incredible noise and things will go flying everywhere, so you just cut it by hand. It's a lot easier and safer. Done. Okay, so you can see that's a pretty good meeting. I've got the distance right, everything. It's sitting up here where it should be. It's just that this side's much higher, so I've just got to sand that down, test fit it, see how it goes. Right, so I've cut both sides the same depth, but as you can see there's a much bigger gap here between this point and this point, then between this point and this point. So this line on the orange plastic has to come up so it mates better. So I've got to work on that. So what I'll do is just cut down, like sand down like a millimetre, that end tapering off, and just gently rinse, repeat. Right, so got a nice, much better match there. The gap's even all the way along. It has raised the problem though, in that the battery box is well and truly buried under that thing. So what I think I'm going to have to do is fix this to the gun, do the epoxy putty, and then very carefully with the Dremel cut a line, something like that. So I can still lift off the battery box, but that's got a nice strong anchor point. And that will also allow me to do all my jiggery pokery detail in here without any great issues worrying about that. Now I've got to glue this corner up on here. I've cut off a bit on the back there just to make it easier to get the pegs in. There we go. So I can get the pegs in the door and the door will close. And I can actually see the pegs go in the back here, so I can screw that on. Now what I've done, I've marked a line here with my trusty X-Acto blade, so I know where I've got to get the goo, and only where I've got to get the goo. So what I'm going to do is put some goo glue along there, a little bit under there, stick this on, screw it down, let it set, then cut it with the Dremel along that line. I'm crazy. So here we go. Okay, this is going to be fun. Fit in properly. Okay, with the screwing down. So I'll go inside and worry and fret for about an hour now while this sets up, and we'll see how clever or how stupid I've been. I'm going for stupid. Right, it's been a good hour since I glued this on. I'm not going to leave it any longer in case I have problems with it and I have to tear it off. So better when it's softer. I mean, just going to put it on there again and check where I've got to cut.